What's up, everyone? This is Big Poner. I am here to touch back onto the Frostblades build. This is kind of like a more help video. The first video was kind of to give you a quick demonstration of what the build can do, even using not non-min-maxed gear. This build is going to more give you the super cheap conversion and also help you with your tree as you progress because you don't start out at level 94 or even in the 90s. You have to level up. So I'm going to give you the best pathing and the best way to solve issues with leveling. I'm also going to explain to you what those two issues are. There's two issues in leveling this character. They have to do with your requirements. You're not going to want to change around your jewels in order to deal with these issues. The issue is that in our tree we don't pick up strength, a lot of it. We don't pick up a lot of intelligence, and we're not going to be going to areas just to hit strength or just to hit intelligence. The areas where it's beneficial to hit those, so it serves a dual purpose, we are going to want to do those early. Um, but the big issue are our strength requirement, our intelligence requirement. Our strength requirement for me personally is 151. Um, that that's the highest requirement for strength, and that's on my Immortal Call. You don't want to switch out Immortal Call. Immortal Call is the absolute best defensive skill for this build. The reason why is we're not stacking armor, so we can't use armor-based defenses, which obviously like on my Cyclone build, you see me using Molten Shell, which is awesome because it gives you can give you a giant health shield, but that's only if you have a ton of armor because it adds a shield based on your armor, which obviously even if you do kind of a dual evasion armor thing like I've done, you're not going to have very much armor because we're using these defensive stats. And also if you split fully between evasion and armor, like the 50% loss of armor and 30% less energy shield, we're not using energy shield, so we don't care about that. We lose the armor, but you don't even have to throw armor into your build. I just like it because the way the build works, when the build's actually running, it's kind of hitting a point where the investment of evasion is kind of like it's called a breaking point basically, where your investment into that stat no longer is as beneficial. So in the beginning, it's like if I add a little bit of intelligence, it's a big increase. So like for instance, like my armor, so I'm at 36%. So I add that. What is that doing? It's doubling it, but I'm only adding 20%. So you see how it kind of scales it down. So we'll look at it with my helm. So I'm adding 30% and it's only adding, well, 34% more evasion, but it's only adding 6%. So the higher the evasion gets, the lower the increases are. And this isn't my actual evasion. The reason why is because my evasion spools up based on my frenzy stacks being in combat. So my effective evasion is actually way higher than this. Um, so if I continue to add evasion to that, my effective gains are just so small. And that, on top of that, the best in slot for damage is the spiked gloves, which are an armor base. So I have a little bit of armor there. I go with the two tones for the cold resistance because it's a build that I'm trying to make resistances not as big of a deal, both in our pathing choices, so we don't have to focus a lot on that, so we can pick up a lot of damage stats and critical stats and stuff like that. Those are our focuses. Like we have no resistances on the helm, no resistances on the amulet, no resistances on the rings. We have resistances only in two places. We have it on our belt and our boots. That's it. Like that just freed up a lot of slots for us. That's why we've chosen these choices. So me choosing an armor shield, it gives me a little bit of physical damage reduction. It gives me a nice point for my physical damage reduction, 24%, which is basically like taking off a quarter of it, which is nice. And then also, our defensive stat. So the thing to pay attention on this is only level it up high enough that your strength requirement at the time can match, because you don't want to level it up to a point where like you're struggling for strength and you can't use it. The other thing that you want to pay attention to on this is cast when damage is taken. It tells you how much life it casts at. For this to actually be the most effective, in my experience, the way that it's always worked the best for me is to have it slightly over half of my maximum life pool. So as you can see, I have 5,000 HP, and this is set up for 2874, so it's a little bit over half of my HP, which what doing something like this does is it's going to proc when I take big damage when I really need it, but it's not going to proc on something like really small and then not be there when I need it. That's why we don't want the cast when damage is taken to be too low, and we don't want it to be too high. If it's too high, then it might only be casting when we die, which that's not ideal. We don't want to be dead when it casts. We want it to actually cast, but we don't want it to cast on something that's so small that it, it's going to be on cooldown when we really need it. That's something to pay attention to. Eventually, I think 5k HP. I'm in less HP gear. Um, so I think probably your cast when damage is taken as you're leveling, probably going to be lower than what mine is, but probably not too much lower. Anyways, the other thing is Frost Bomb. This is our hardest requirement to meet because we don't have as easy of a solution. 155 intelligence. The easiest fix for this, this is our highest requirement on intelligence, is to just not level it up until you can meet the requirement easily. Eventually, you're going to want a big intelligence stat on one of your items or two decent rolls on two of your items. I chose to go with the Lapis Amulet 30 intelligence um, as my base, as an easy way to fix my intelligence. I am 4 intelligence over what I needed. So I've basically pretty much perfectly hit that. The only other place that I have intelligence, I filled it in right there on the Steigen with a dual mod. If I needed to, I could have crafted just intelligence, gotten more intelligence there, but that's another easy way to fix that. Or if at the time I hadn't needed strength, I would have prioritized a tier 1 strength on, my gloves or my boots. I don't want it on my I don't want it can't have it on this ring, my only rare item. Can't have it on my necklace because I would be losing too much for the multi-mod. I would be losing too much damage stats for me to multi-mod on an intelligence stat. Like that's something I would not do. Same thing with the ring. I'm not gonna put I'm not gonna craft on an intelligence stat onto a ring that I'm investing, 2 exalts for a multi-mod, an exalt for the percentage increased damage. I've chaos spammed a ton to hit it where it's at. Like that's something I'm not gonna do. But the gloves, you could roll for the intelligence. Another way that you can do that is you can do essences. So if you're having trouble hitting that stat, essences are super cheap this season. We have a which one? Where is it? Armor for intelligence. So where is it? Life. I will find it. I refuse to give up. Strength. Where's intelligence? It's intelligence one. Why is it nowhere near the? Um, oh, there we go. Essence of Spite. So we have 51 to 58 intelligence. That completely solves our issue. So if you're having trouble filling in your intelligence stat, just take whatever your worst item is, get a best slot base, and you can use the Deafening Essence of Spite. Obviously, if you have a little bit more currency to spend, buy a few of them, roll something that's going to actually be good for your stats, but that's a way to guarantee that you're getting all the intelligence that you need. The other way that we're going to be filling in the rest of that 155 is our pathing choices. So I'm going to go over the best pathing. When you start off, this is actually the way that you're going to go, um, and the way that this area is going to stay the same. You are going to have to come over here. You don't want to skip this. The reason why is we're doing a physical to cold damage conversion. The Frost Blades does 60% of it, so we have to pick up an extra 20% conversion to be at full conversion. So you'll see I have no physical damage. If I were to be like, oh, I don't really want this, something else looks better, I apply that, now I've got physical damage. That's not what we want. Your drops the damage a lot because it's no longer being converted to cold damage, so it's not getting all the multipliers of elemental, cold penetration, or negative to cold damage. That's a massive loss. That absolutely cannot be changed. Coming up through here, this is one of the places that we're going to pick up a little bit of intelligence. This is also a certain super important thing to pick up early just because the stats are really good. Movement speed, critical strike chance, attack damage. You want to get that early. You want to get this jewel slot early, and you want to get the frenzy charge early. Um, the intuitive leap. It's 50 chaos. I checked it before this video. We did have a lot of price changes on some of these items. This was not the one. It's been consistently 50 chaos. We will go over the one that did change quite a bit. Um, this is what you're going to want to be starting off with. If you're going super cheap to start, buy 3 of these because they're like a chaos. Um, Even to get a nice one like a chaos or two, one that's not perfect rolls is going to be less than that. The thing is the only thing that differs on its rolls is the 10 to 15% cold damage, which is the thing that's adding the most damage is the penetration. It's not damage that you see, but it is the best damage on it. So we do want to come down here early. The reason why is because we pick up a lot of really strong stats. So you are going to want to come across here, and you are going to want to go this way. This will hit you 10 intelligence, and it also will be the most efficient way to come across here. You want to fill out all of this early. This gives us all stuff that we need. That's a big increase to attack speed, 12%. Ignore penalties. That's a big deal. We get big percentage life. That's evasion and life, 8%, 24%. That's huge. Right here, we get increased to physical damage, but we also get 20 strength. We get regeneration and 2 to melee and unarmed attack range. That's really big. So you absolutely are going to want to go that way. Here, this is the spot that you could make some differences. Um, if you have more resistances on your gear and you don't really need the resistances, you could skip all 3 of these stats. And there's 2 ways that you could skip these. You could go you could fill this in, which is not really that useful. We're already going to have 36% increased frenzy charge duration through stats that you actually have to take. So that's not the best choice, but if you're trying to spread your points more, doing that would save you 2 points. Eventually, you're probably going to want to either hit here and then here, which would make it so that you'd be picking up 5% life. You'd only be saving 1 point by skipping these, which you'd be losing a lot of evasion and the all resistances. So that's probably like I wouldn't change this because the more stats you free up, you're able to put more stuff on your gear. This just also makes it really easy. You get big boosts to evasion and armor and a big total elemental resistances, which really is what makes it, I wouldn't skip it, but if you're trying to to pick up a couple extra skill points, that's something you could do. Um, Coming down here is absolutely important. The thing is we're going to have 7 frenzy charges, so every single one of these stats are basically like having a big node in the stats. Like it's basically like having one of these because what do these actually do? At 7 frenzy charges, this is 35% increased evasion. That's big. That's, comparable to that. Here we've got 2% increase per frenzy charge. That's 14% movement speed. Here we've got 2% increased attack speed. That's 14% increased attack speed. Absolutely huge. Here, this is giving us minimum frenzy charge, which isn't a big deal. It's nice to just always have that one, but the main thing is we have more of a chance to gain frenzy charges on kill. We also have 5% increased damage per frenzy charge, so 35% increased damage, extra frenzy charge generation. You're going to want to get the fight for survival. You have to have all four of these dexterity stats filled out in order to get the stats from this. If you don't do this pathing to hit all four of these, you won't get the bonuses from this. So you have to do that because the thing that's making this valuable is not the 15% cold damage, it's the 15% cold penetration. That's what's really good on that. So as far as heading up here, early in the build, leveling this, you're going to want to get these stats. These give you a ton of survivability. Early, you're going to want to come over here. The reason why is for two purposes. First of all, this is a huge increase to your stats overall. 18% increased evasion, 8% max life, 12% increased physical damage, all really good stats. The other thing that this does is it gives us access to two easy fixes. If I'm struggling for intelligence with one stat point, I can fill in 30 intelligence until I'm able to fill it in on my gear. If I need 30 strength, it's an easy way to fill in 30 strength. Heading up here, all of this, absolutely important to fill in. This is where we get a lot of our damage. The frenzy charge, absolutely important. That's something you're also going to want to pick up. You don't necessarily have to go to this one. Eventually, you'd want to fill it in because that 6% is going to be one of the best intelligence, best HP fill-in points that you can get. And once you get like your tree branched out, in endgame build, there's not really anywhere that you can branch off and get better stuff, so that you're going to have a few points to fill in places. So when you start getting to that point where you've pretty much filled in all of the notable passives, then you're going to want to fill in, here, throw throw the extra points here, just give you a little bit of extra HP. So we are going to want to come up here to hit the jewel slot. The reason why is because this gives us 20 more intelligence that we need. That's where we struggle. We're going to be picking up a total of like 80 or 90 of our intelligence inside of our tree. There's a few places that we do that. We do that here. We get 10. We pick up 10, 20, 30, 40 doing this. If you don't need the intelligence really early, this wouldn't be the first place to go. You're going to want to come across here. Ignore this early. You're going to want to come across here and go down here. The reason why is because this gives us really big critical strike chance, critical strike multiplier spots, and then it also leads into really big sustainability and life, which obviously you need to, in order to progress smoothly throughout the whole thing, you're going to need a balance of your damage, your HP, movement speed, all of that stuff, which coming across here is really big because we get, these obviously are not the best points, but it does give us damage, and it also gives us area of effect. So all of this line right here is absolutely important. You're going to want to come through here, go up here, and then you can fill in these 3 points later. Um, this later when you can afford it. What you're going to want to do last is probably these 5 stats right here. These are probably the least important stats for you to fill in because it's not helping you reach those intelligence or strength stats. It's shield based stats. It does give you a lot of damage. It does because, I mean, 8% increased attack speed, 20% attack damage, and 40% increased defenses. It is really big stats, but as far as like tying the build together, it's kind of like a last priority. Um, it's something eventually is a best in slot, but not early in your progress. You could essentially choose those because it's 5 points to go up here, and it's also 5 points to fill out this. Um, the reason why I would take this before that is because this is going to fill in 20 more intelligence that you need, just making that less of less of a hassle, and the critical strike multiplier with more damage accuracy, and then also the reason why you want to fill in all of this stuff is because the biggest change since I made the last video was the Lethal Pride came down a ton in price. When I made the first video was like a week ago, maybe less than a week ago, and this jewel at the time was 4 exalts. So now it is like a little over 1 exalt. I just bought one yesterday for like 1 exalt and 17 chaos for one of my new builds, which is super cheap. And for this build, there is nothing that you can choose that will add as much stats. This does several things for us. It gives us an absolutely huge amount of HP. So I'm at 5,003. Unslotting it, it's 128 HP. So that's a ton of HP for the slot. For damage, obviously none of my buffs are up or anything. 65, it drops me 5k on my base damage, which when you scale up, and you're also not seeing some of the damage that's on this, and you can just roll absolutely crazy stats on this. The other really big thing about this, if we needed more reasons to have this, look at my strength. I'm at 308. I'm at 206. 102 strength from the jewel. Why is that huge? So I originally made two items with tier 1 strength to deal with my strength requirements at 150. I could now completely remove strength from my build, and with this jewel and just my pathing where I've picked up like hardly no strength, I would be able to meet the requirement. So that's completely ignoring all of the other stuff that this jewel does. When you first buy one, the thing is for an exalt and slightly over an exalt, you're most likely not going to slot it in, and you're going to be like, holy crap, I've got all of these amazing stats, critical strike chance and stun duration and critical strike multiplier and life leech and stun threshold and reduced damage from critical strikes and chance to deal double damage. Like you're probably not going to get a lethal pride that's just going to slot like that. The thing is even if the stats on it are bad, it's still just for the HP, and removing the strength requirement that's gonna be a cap you have to hit, it frees up extra stats on your other items, which means you can add like more of other stuff. Like for instance on this, what could I add here? Instead of having that strength stat, I could have gone for physical damage or increased attack speed or tons of other things. That's my point. And here, I mean, instead of multi-modding on a tier 1 strength um, that has you know I could have prioritized my multi-mod for something else. I could have gone for pretty much anything else. I could have instead used perfect fossils and tried to get like over 100 HP with percent life, and you know it just frees up extra stats for other better stuff. I haven't changed that out. Obviously, I've done 4 characters in like 2 weeks to over level 90. There's a certain point where I have to stop investing in builds, or I can't do the next build, which now I'm trying to get currency to do yet another build. So I'm not going to go back to this build to min max it more. But the point is you could actually make this build stronger than mine by using these tips and planning your gear accordingly. But Lethal Pride is definitely something that I am going to recommend going for. Um, Other than that, I mean, I think this pretty much explains everywhere to go, the reasons for going through stuff. Um, One thing that you'll probably notice is I didn't come down here. Uh, I POB'd everything for min max on stuff. This looks like a good stat. It is a good stat, but you're not able to hit everything else, and the overall effectiveness of the build drops a lot if you do go for it. Um, so there's obviously people that are going to want to change stuff. The other option for this is like if you dropped stuff up here and you took a life here, but you're gonna miss out on other nice clusters, or you're not gonna be able to pick up other things. So anyways, guys, I hope this answered all your questions and will help you progress a lot better. The last thing I want to say is I had someone be like, "I can't believe you were recommending such an expensive buckler." This is the cheap version. This is like a chaos or less. This is not the upgraded version, which is like I don't know, some crazy like 50 or 60 exalts. This is not that. This is a super cheap item. This is at Atziri's Mirror Golden Buckler. Cheap version. All the stuff that I've recommended for you to start out, you can do the Wasp Nest under a Chaos. You can do the Mirror under a Chaos. You can get 3 of these jewels for under a Chaos. The main thing is just to start out, you're gonna want to get a 6 link. And everything else besides that, you can run this build extremely cheap and upgrade as you go. So I hope this helped you guys. I hope you guys enjoy the build. This is one of my favorite builds. It's probably from like beginning to end the strongest build overall for like all content and its end game potential. I really like this build, and I'm on my 6th build this season, and I really like my other builds, but as far as like well-roundedness and fun to play, this one's my favorite. Um, there's obviously like my bow build is better at map clear. Like if I'm only focusing on map clear, it's better at map clear, but it's not as good. It's harder to level. There's definitely like that middle zone is not as smooth. It's really good once it gets to a finished product, but in like the middle zone, you're gonna struggle. Um, Cyclone build, way more damage. I think right now my Cyclone, not counting some of its stuff, at level 92 is over 15 million DPS with no Headhunter. Absolutely stupid damage. The thing is it has a lot more damage, but it doesn't have the wave clear of this build. It doesn't have the speed of this build. This build's faster. There's other things that the other builds offer, but all around, this is the best well-rounded build. My ED build, probably the best build for hardcore or leveling up to level 100 because it has more than enough damage to beat all content, has no weaknesses to anything in the game, and can kill Elder Guardians without moving. Like, yeah, um, but it's a lot slower than this build. So like for farming currency, it's not ideal. And this can do all that stuff. It's not something I would use for hardcore. For SSF, this would be actually an amazing build because all the gear you can craft, and there's really not very much requirements on gear. Obviously, it's going to be harder for you to get like multiple fight for survival jewels, but they're not actually required. They're just really cheap and really good for what they cost. So um, this would be a great SSF build. Not good for a hardcore. You would have to change the build quite a bit to a lot more defense, a lot more defense spec, um, which you could do with this build with small changes, but I'm not going to go into that because that's not what this build was made for. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you enjoy this build. Catch you guys later.